Just another beautiful day in paradise, this side of heaven. Yes, indeed. It is a serene and simple life here at the rest area. For those of you who've been following me for a while, you know I'm a rest area junkie. It is the top of the list for where I go to park overnight, and sometimes even to hang out for an entire day or two, as in the case here. I was here a couple weeks ago and met the main manager of this rest area, and we got to talking. Oh my gosh, a beautiful, beautiful conversation. And he told me that I could come anytime I want and stay as long as I want. In so many words, like I can't live here, permanently. I have thought of that in the past. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful conversation. We got to know one another a little bit, and he did something that people don't normally do. I talked about myself and about my Nomad journey and how I lived on the road for 3.5 years, and I got permission from a rest area in Kentucky where I could stay while the build of my tiny home was happening, and I was filming, and said it wasn't really something that they allowed, but he would give me permission. That's a bunny trail. So I was talking about traveling and seeing all 50 states except for Alaska. And when I was done, he said, well, if you don't mind, let me tell you a little bit about me. And I absolutely loved that, because I didn't have to, so tell me about you, which I do. But when people are just open to that, I only know him as a supervisor here, and and he's married, and I'm not going to get too friendly and delve into his life. He told me he's on his 4th marriage, that things that his mother shared in a journal before she passed, and I'm going to save that for the end. It's really, really precious, and I wrote it down. So yes, hanging out at a rest area, and you can see Happy Haven in the back. Guys, I am waiting for my tiny home build. And I'm actually going to call it a micro home. One of the quotes came back and said, this is for your micro home. For some reason, I really liked that word versus tiny home. So when you think of tiny home, you think of it on a trailer, or I do at least, more like registered with the DMV, which, I've already mentioned that. People are like, aren't you getting a home like you had before? That was not real property, and I am not allowed to put a park model, which you register with the DMV. You don't register it as real property. So that's the reason behind that. Go back and watch the videos. Some of you, I know it's a lot of catch up, but my videos are less than 30 minutes, only twice a week. So if you really want to know about this gypsy soul, I've got some great, great stuff in the playlist. And for those of you who are new, 3.5 years on the road, bought a landing zone in Georgia, sold my tiny home that was on a lease lot. All along, since I started this journey, I've wanted to own my own piece of property. I spent some power trips through Tennessee looking for land. Didn't have the cash. I'm debt-free. I'm going to continue to be debt-free. I sold my tiny home in Georgia, and of course, when you sell, sometimes you get fortunate and blessed, and you make a profit. And I still come up short to pay cash, so I worked in Michigan for the summer. And I'm going to tell you all about that job today. And then I'm also going to tell you what I'm doing now, after I tell you about the job that I pursued for a few months in Michigan. So, hope you'll join me. Hey all you Serene and Simple Life peeps, it's Linda here with a Serene and Simple Life. At least most of the time. It's always my goal, it's always what I work to. And yeah, sometimes it can be mind over matter. And that's okay. As long as you're heading in that direction, that's a good thing. Before we begin today's topic, which is what I did in Michigan, I do want to share with you something that I've just seen on a recent video. She mentions it at the beginning of every video, that she's the author of blah blah. Well, I am the author of A Rut to Revival, a Gypsy Soul Nomad Journey. And it is over 200 pages packed full of a personal story. It's a handbook for traveling and for being a nomad. And there is so much inspiration and insights about life in this book that I really think everybody should read it. You can head on over to Amazon. That's where you can find it. I've got 12 pages or 11 pages in here of all the places I visited in the United States for free. Now, before I go any further about the topic, I am going to share with you, so don't waste your time, that if you make a comment that I'm always plugging my product, and that's what this channel is, then you are sorely misled. You don't watch me on a regular basis. I probably have not mentioned this book for 3 months. I didn't mention it at all in Michigan, I don't believe. And if I did, it was very much in passing. I did a series on 101 of becoming a nomad, and I definitely mentioned it in that because this is a reference guide for becoming a nomad as well. So, don't even bother, the comment won't get posted. Why? Because negative comments are directed at me. And this will be a video for another day. So, I'm not taking away your freedom of speech. You shared the comment with me, right? And I read it, and then I delete it. I don't need the world to read all the negative comments of what people think of me on a negative basis. But I also don't allow people who are continual, you just know that they will never say anything nice about you. That there's no point in you watching my channel. So, bye-bye. Okay, enough on that. Rut to Revival, it makes a fabulous gift. And if you don't mind, if you already have the book, please head over to Amazon and place a review. Some of the reviews are just over the top beautiful, and I just thank you so much for that. I really, really do. All right, so we're at a rest area today. We're taking a break, and we're waiting for my micro home to be built. I am going to do, the next video coming out will be on where I stand with my micro home and what's happening and the build and everything. But for today, I have been promising you and making comments that I would let you know what all the job entailed in Michigan. I think when I headed out, I said, oh, I couldn't believe it. I was going, to get a job. And someone commented, I thought, you weren't ever going to be doing a side job again. I should have mentioned that doing a side job when you want to do a side job and you don't have to do a side job is quite different than being forced to do a side job just to pay the rent. And that was what I was over from back in the day, is I was done being an entrepreneur, trying to get ahead, trying to work my say it, display it business as best I could, and still having to go to work just to pay the bills. Well, now it's different. Now I'm going to be paying cash for my micro home, and I started getting quotes, gathering quotes, and I was like, man, I'm coming up short. I'm coming up short a a few thousand, 10,000 would be helpful. I didn't profit as much as I thought I would on the tiny home in Georgia, although, you know, I did profit. I mean, definitely profited. Live in the moment. I'll tell you, you know, the person that bought my home too got a good deal because they got all the appliances, they got all the setup, you know, everything taken care of, the blinds, everything extra that you don't think about when you're getting a home, or you don't think about right away. So I said, you know what, on paper, this is not looking like I want it to look. You know, I thought like the plumbing would be 8,000 max, you know, and it's coming up 9, 10,000. Just the electrical, everything combined. And then when I think about getting a washer and dryer and a refrigerator and getting a little driveway, oh my gosh, it's like, Linda, you need to work. And the opposite, you know, of working, of course, is not working. So what am I going to do with my time? I am not in a go, see, do mode. And that is basically because the price of gas, which we've all heard over and over and keep saying, but I'm also just not feeling it right now. When I was in Michigan, I was working 30 hours a week. There was a couple weeks where I only had 15, 20 hours, but for the majority of the time, it was 30 hours. And on my days off, you know, I could have gone and explored beautiful Michigan, but I had already seen Sleeping Bear Dunes. I had already gone to Pictured Rocks. I was way up north near Ontario. And I don't know, I just felt like I needed some reprieve on my days off. I did a lot of videos, tons and tons of short videos. So I was even working on my days off, and, you know, I loved being in the forest, in the woods, and I just, you know, I shared a video of what my 2 different campsites look like. And I hope you really enjoyed the 3-part series and you watched that of the Covenant Hills campground where I worked. If not, please go back and watch those. I'll try to remember to put those in the description box so you can watch those. They didn't get the hits that I thought they would. You know, sometimes that has to do with the tricky algorithm with YouTube, and other times it just the YouTube comment was, you know, your regular followers are not watching this as much, so I don't know how they figure all that out. But anyways, I think they're 3 great videos. You get to meet Donna, who's been a longtime resident there, and then you get to meet the director, get to see all the wonderful amenities, and then of course you get to see where I worked. And that was I think that was in part 2. No, that was in part 3. The dining hall where I worked. So what did I do? What did I do? Well, on an average day, I was getting up around 6:15 in the morning, which was wonderful. Oh my gosh, guys, you know, I think about it. I hear about people who get up at 4 or 5 in the morning before the world starts, and it's such a beautiful, wonderful time. And anytime I'm up after 5 or 6 o'clock, I'm just so happy to be up. Put in the comments, are you an early riser? I would really like to start doing that in my later years here as we're winding down life. Be up by 5 or 6 and go to bed at 8 or 9, you know, not sleep too long. So, but I was up by like 6:15, 6:30 in order to start work at 7:30. And I had 3 2-hour shifts a day. Sometimes that was for 5 days a week. A few times it was for 7 days a week. I had a period where I worked, I think it was 21 days straight, because we had a cheerleader camp come in on the weekend. So normally band camp or church camps, whatever, they were like a Monday through Friday. They weren't weekends, but the cheerleading camp was. So that put put me into a schedule that was without a day off. And we had a couple small groups come in, some discovery groups or like a science group or something, and those were on the weekends. But it was 7:30 to 9:30, and then it was 11:30 to 1:30, and then it was 4:30 to 6:30. That was my basic schedule. Now it could vary a half an hour either end if the group didn't sign up to have breakfast till 8:30. Then we were always in a half an hour before the group would come in, because we had a setup to do. And I am without notes today, except for a couple things about why you should maybe consider yourself looking into a job. And I'm going to share that at the end. Even if you're retired, what a job can do for you. So the setup consisted of doing stations. There was normally and on average 3 stations, especially if we had anywhere over 100, 150 people coming in or kids coming in. We had 3 breakdown stations. It consisted of 3 tubs and a big bucket. And they were all labeled. We had to put the labels on each day. We just snapped on this little clippy thing, and I did show that in the third part 3 video, the little station there, or the table anyways. The bucket was for your extra liquids. If you didn't drink all your coffee or your juice, you dumped it in the bucket. Then next was your cups in order. And then we did silverware, and then we had plastic trays that had different compartments on them, and that was your eating plate. So when you were done eating, you would take your stuff up to the station. We had one in the front of the dining hall where I came in with Donna, and then we had one in the back towards the kitchen, and we sometimes had a third one on the side wall. We had round tables, seating 8, although there was times when there was like 12 chairs around a table. It was kind of crazy, like kids needed to sit together. So they pull the chairs around. Besides the setup, I also worked with 2 other ladies, a mother and daughter team. And they normally, we had our own, Kelly was my supervisor. That was the daughter. And her and her mom would normally put out all the utensils for the lines. When we had big groups, we had 2 lines of the hot food. So you get your tongs or your spoon, whatever the case may be. You had to look at what kind of food was being served that day. And then in addition, we had 2 salad bars, and the salad bar would be all set up. Of course, this was at lunchtime. We did have a breakfast bar too. We only ever had a setup we had 2 breakfast bars sometimes. Had yogurt, fruit, jelly and butter, and granola, and I can't remember what else, but that was a whole setup where we had to take all the plastic lids off of the setup there, and then put the utensils in as well. And there was times when Kelly and Mom would not be there for some reason, if it was just a very short, small group, 15, 20 people, or Kelly went back to her regular job early. Mom actually broke her shoulder. She fell one morning coming to work, so she was out of commission for, I don't know, a good 4 to 6 weeks. So it was basically just Kelly and I. So we'd all pitch in with each other, but that was the basic setup. Filling up the cereal, we got cereal dispensers, and we all had buckets where the kids would come over to the breakdown station, get a rag immersed in a hot soapy water that you could use for the tables, and they would wipe their tables down. So it was good practice for them too, for cleanup. bunny trail. We had a couple groups come in for the Fireside Club, which Donna mentioned. You can go to Covenant Hills campground, I think it's .org, and you can donate to the campground. Such a lovely, lovely, beautiful Methodist campground, free Methodist. But the Fireside Club had a special dinner one night, and the chef asked me to pick up people's trays and, you know, clean the table. And I'm telling you, I was back in my element, because I have done food serving off and on for 20 years, through the years. I worked at Cracker Barrel, Steak and Ale. Oh my gosh, where else have I worked? A place called Sorry Charlie's that's no longer in existence. That was in Greensburg, Pennsylvania. But I was a hard worker, still a hard worker. I don't think that ever leaves you. I've got a great work ethic from my dad. He was a very hard worker, and all us kids got that from him. My mom was a hard worker too. She was a stay-at-home working mom until we went into school, and then she had side jobs to help make ends meet through the years. She was a bank teller, was one of her things, but I never got into that. Mine was food serving and retail as far as side jobs. So picking up people's and clean, they were like, you don't have to do that, you don't have to do that. I'm like, it's my pleasure, which it really was. I got a kick out of people being able to sit around and chat and not have to get up and break down, you know, take their plates up to the little stations. But of course, for the kids, we wanted them to do that, and they were always in and out in a half an hour. I mean, they didn't have, there was no time, there was no messing around with them. So that was good. You could always come back for seconds too. So it was putting buckets out. We had 2 buckets at every station with the hot water, soapy water, and rags. And then while they were going through the food line, we would keep the food line cleaned up, let the chef and the cooks and the help know if we were running low on something. We refilled fruit, we refilled yogurt, just watch things. Oftentimes one of my jobs was to hand out a dessert at lunch or dinner. I got a kick out of doing that, and so Kelly and her mom just, you know, let me continue on. I think last year it was just Kelly and her mom, so there wasn't the extra help. We did have 2 other volunteer, Kelly and mom were paid employees, and then we had a couple volunteer employees too that put in, oh my gosh, 30 hours or more of volunteer work. And they get their site for free and they get meals, but they're not being paid anything monetary. So they were wonderful ladies as well. And I will attach a picture of one of my new friends at the end. Well, a couple of my new friends, Kelly and mom, and another lady. But yeah, so we would watch the line, just, you know, clean up. Sometimes we had back-to-back groups, so we had to do a quick sweep if there was food on the floor, big stuff, clean, napkins on the floor, make sure that all the stations were torn down. And sometimes when the first group, after they went through the line, we'd be able to sit down and eat. Now that was one of the huge perks of this job, was I got 3 square meals a day. I'm telling you, I've never had such wonderful, delicious food. Not the healthiest, but you know, I could always go to the salad bar too. But 3 meals a day. And after I left the job, which has now been a few weeks, my stomach had to get used to not eating like that, because I'm normally a 1 to 2 meals a day girl. And I hope you have enjoyed the food hauls. I am going to do an update video. I'm really cracking down on what I'm going to be eating, and I'm just praying and praying that God takes away any bit of the sugar addiction that I have and the junk food, because it's time. He's given me plenty of years to be a snacker, to eat whatever I want, to have really great health that I'm so blessed about. I've never had health issues, and I feel like there's something, you know, it's just telling me, Linda, it's time. You've eaten your last bag of chips with canola oil and vegetable oil and soybean oil and all the sugary cakes. Now, once a month, may I do something like that? Maybe. But I'm telling you, when I stopped drinking, and I'm sober 33 years, my anniversary was on September 20th. I forgot to celebrate. I didn't want to, like my one friend said, Linda, you weren't an alcoholic, it was just because of your bad marriage, you know. And I'm like, you know, I can't chance that. Another bunny trail. I can't just have like 1 or 2 beers a month. You know, I'm either going to be all in because I have an addictive personality, or I'm not going to do it at all. So I don't know. Have I said bye-bye to Ruffles and Lay's forever? I'm sure hoping so. That'll be another video on another day. So after the groups left, sometimes we had 2 back-to-back, sometimes there was 3. Not often, but a couple times. We swept, pulled out the chairs and swept under every table. And that could be anywhere from 10 to over 20 tables. It was a lot of back-breaking sweeping. That was a job that I fell into and continued to do while Kelly and Mom would normally wipe down the food, the hot lines, and put the lids back on the salad bar or the breakfast bar, take out all the utensils, sweep around the line at the front, and then Kelly helped me with sweeping. Mom didn't do any sweeping. She had a bad back, just like a year older than me, so I'm very grateful that I was able to do what I could do. Really, really grateful. So she wasn't able to sweep, and I did mop with Kelly the first couple times when I first started the job, and then I was like, this is too much to mop the entire dining hall. So Kelly took that on. She did get paid a little bit more too, so I'm not feeling too guilty about that. But I absolutely did my share of work. And I got some nice compliments along the way. The chef was one of the best bosses that I've ever worked for. He was laid back, but yet, you know, a hard worker, and showed his appreciation for me. And for that, I'm very, very grateful. Now, I know we're getting a little bit long here, and this was a short-term goal, you know, to meet my budget for my tiny home. And I did say at one point, I'm looking at my notes, never another side job, but I have a totally different mindset about that now. I've also said I never want to go into debt again, so this is hopefully going to keep me out of debt, because now I am working again. This just happens to be a day off, guys. Yeah, and I put some notes in here about the last job, and of course I'm looking for them and I can't find them. But I think that having a side job combats loneliness. It combats isolation. It gets you out with people, even if it's only for 15, 20 hours a week. I know, you know, when you're on Social Security, you have to be careful of how much you make over, or you're going to end up paying back some of your Social Security. It's like $1 for every 2, so you got to be careful of that. But I also believe that it's great for your emotional, mental, physical, and even your spiritual health. God pruned me through the summer. There was a few times where I really carried around I was harboring a little bit of resentment and a little bit of bitter anger, of sometimes feeling like others weren't pulling their weight. And I had to remind myself, Linda, you're doing this job for Jesus. You're not doing it for anybody else. And just mind your own job. Don't mind what other people are doing. Because through the years, I would get down when I get down with slackers. This is the bottom line. I don't like to watch people work. Never have and never will. I don't know, unless it's a guy job that I know I can't do, then I get a kick out of watching what they're doing and how they're doing it, and just, impressed by that. But to sit and watch somebody sweeping the floors and you don't get up, something like that, there was times when God had to remind me and reprimand me and tweak my attitude. I feel like I have a much better attitude in my new job. And yes, I did say I'm working. I am now still coming up short for my micro home. So I'm gonna work. I'm not sure if it's going to be short term or long term. And I'm going to give you an update on what's happening with my micro home. But I am back to cashiering. I have cashiered at Hobby Lobby, Target, Ralph's, which was bought by Kroger's, Walmart twice while I was a Nomad, and I can't remember if there's any other stores or not. I did work at a boutique in Delaware when I lived there, so I have a lot of retail background through the years. Back in the day I worked for Kaufman's when I graduated with a merchandising degree and associates. I worked for some big department stores, but now I'm back working as a cashier in a food chain. All right. Friendships for life. The security of having a buffer, of having a savings account. As prices rise, it's really wonderful to continue to build that savings account. I have friends now from Michigan that I'll have hopefully for the rest of my life, and you guys know who you are. And they talk about coming to see me at my tiny home, my micro home. All right, I guess that's about it. I mentioned our setup. The hardest part of the job, I think, sometimes was the breakdown or not the breakdown, but the time in between the shifts. Because sometimes I felt like I was working from 7 in the morning till 7 at night. At least even 6:15 when you get up, you start your day, it's about work. One of the best things about the job was a t-shirt and shorts and tennis shoes. Oh my gosh. And in addition, walking to work and walking back home at night. Many times people stopped with their golf cart, would you like a ride? And I absolutely had to say no every single time. I think one time I was running a little bit late, or it was gonna start raining, and I took a ride on the golf cart, and I'm like, nope, no matter how tired I am, I'm gonna keep these legs moving as long as I can. So the uniform and the walking to and from work were the best. I would say the nonstop sweeping every single day and the breaks in between, which felt like in 2 hours time you can't really do anything, although I didn't have a lot to do anyways, sitting in the woods when I wasn't out sightseeing. But that was those were probably the two hardest things. The weather was pretty good. I mean, we really did have some 85, 90 degree days, and absolutely the very worst thing about where I was the mosquitoes. I got bit up quite a bit, even though we had somebody that sprayed, of course, being in the woods. But there was also other places in the campground where, the mosquitoes were just off the charts this summer. So that was really hard. The heat and the rain sometimes was really hard. We all dealt with that this summer. But overall, it was $10 an hour, and I walked away with well over $2,000 towards my tiny home, and I'm back at it again. Last thing I want to share with you guys is what the supervisor shared with me, that when his mom passed, he found in her journal This was written by his mama before she passed. Serve God, give it all to him, and everything is going to be okay. Serve God, give it all to him, and everything is going to be okay. Blessings in your day, and joy in your journey. Please stay tuned. I'm going to be doing an update on my tiny home. I just did the 3-part series on Covenant Hills Campground. I did a shopping haul where I'm starting to really pay attention to labels, and I'm going to do an update on how I'm doing in a couple months with my healthy eating habits. I love you guys. I kept saying Kelly and her mom. It was Kelly and Brenda. I'll put a picture of them together. And then my other friend, Sylvia. And that used to be when my sister and I would play house. We were Sylvia and Mary. I think I was Sylvia. I can't remember. And so it was easy to remember her name. She was one of the volunteers in her 70s working super